The Teacher Wars, A History of America's Most Embattled Profession by Dana Goldstein, presented by Brandy Eco. This book was chosen so that I can understand the history and battles that teachers have fought. Realizing the struggles that teachers, especially minorities, have been through to get where they are today allows future teachers to appreciate how far things have come. Dana Goldstein is the author of this book. She comes from a family of educators and was a journalist for the Daily Beast, the American Prospect, and has contributed to numerous other publications. She's a best-selling author for the Teacher Wars and has been awarded many fellowships such as the Schwartz Fellowship from the New America Foundation, a Spencer Foundation Fellowship from Columbia University, and a Puffin Fellowship from the Nation Institute. The Teacher Wars is set up as a timeline. Each chapter focuses on a few key characters and their contribution to the forward momentum and advancements in the teaching profession. The book begins in the 1800s when women were not allowed to be anything but wives and mothers. It moves into the women's movement, minority teachers, teachers' unions, and discrimination of teachers for many different reasons, from religion to personal beliefs to sexual orientation. This book chronicles these struggles and traces the who and how of these teacher wars and how they have shaped today's teaching landscape. There are several key points in Goldstein's book. It is basically a timeline of teaching profession following the who, what, when, where, and why. Goldstein states early in her book that public school teaching has become the most controversial profession in America. She makes some strong remarks in the introduction, laying out her reason for writing this book, and it wasn't to simply write a history of teaching. Key point number 1, American idealism or not. There's an old expression in America, those who can do, those who can't teach. School teachers are often looked down upon if they cannot reach every student and change every life. Yet society has thrown hurdles directly in the way of any achievement the public school system tries to make. Every new era of education reform has been characterized by a political and media war on existing teachers whom we rely on to do this difficult work. From sexism to racism, from school inequality to economic inequality, teachers are supposed to fix all of these major social issues, as well as teach and raise the students in their classrooms. No matter what teachers try to do to make their classrooms more effective, they are always halted by the bigger corporation known as the public school system, which sticks restrictions, guidelines, and deadlines on what teachers are able to do in their classroom. They ultimately tie the teachers' hands behind their back. History has always paid far less attention to the design of the larger public education and social welfare system in which they work. Teachers and schools alone cannot solve our crisis of inequality and long-term unemployment. America's ideals for what teachers are able to do and the reality of what they are allowed to do have made great strides since 1815, but there's still a long way to go. Key point number 2, experience versus newbies. It's been long debated who makes the better teacher, experienced teachers who are stuck in their old ways, or new teachers fresh out of school with new and seemingly naive ideas. Schools into the 20th century preferred tenured veteran teachers against idealistic newbies. There are many advances in teaching styles and pedagogy in the past 15 years, but Teach for America, Teacher Corps, and the Board of National Popular Education recruit ambitious teachers to the classroom, but on a small scale, and do not systematically improve instruction for kids. It seems that the new teachers are not able to provide exciting new instruction to students, but Goldstein continues that teacher quality advocates estimate somewhere between 2 and 15% of current teachers cannot improve their practice to an acceptable level and ought to be replaced every year. These are the same types of arguments that Goldstein presents as being fought since the 1800s. Initially, men were tenured teachers, and when women stepped into the scene, they were considered naive little girls who had no business teaching anything. It continued with minority teachers, and it continues today. Who makes the better teacher, veterans or novice? It leads into the third key point, weeding out the bad teachers. School board members and legislators have always looked for a way to grade teacher ability. This makes sense since poor job performance puts the students in school at risk. In 1902, Chicago Superintendent Edward Cooley wanted to begin evaluating teachers' performance by how well they scored on written exams. In 1912, another way of judging teachers' effectiveness was measured by the students' success. Teachers' effectiveness have been categorized by gender. The average skill of the teacher in the public school may be increased by raising the percent of low proportion of male teachers in schools. What makes a bad teacher? Being a communist, a woman, an African American. Teachers have been fired for all of these things. Goldstein notes that public conversation about teaching rarely offers a realistic sense of scale of how many bad teachers there are and what it would take to improve their skill or to replace them with people who are apt to perform at a higher level. That is the point. A bad teacher is not someone who's young, not someone who's Latino, and not someone who's Catholic or any other religion. A bad teacher is someone who's not willing to improve their ineffective teaching skills for the betterment of the students. Goldstein sheds light on the history, obsessively overrating teachers while paying far less attention to the design of public education. Teachers need to grow and learn as much as their students. No categorization of personal characteristics is going to uncover a teacher's inability to expand their repertoire. Goldstein says to quiet the teacher wars, we must support ordinary teachers in improving their skills. What did you know? I was aware that getting teacher certification was easier and had heard that at one point all you needed was a degree and to be able to pass a test, but I'm not sure I believed it. Goldstein states that in 1952 it was the peak of the baby boom and there was a shortage of public school teachers. College graduate could quickly earn a New York City teaching credential by passing a written exam and a speech test. It seems simple and irresponsible to allow people with no training to waltz into a class and teach young impressionable students. I wonder how the students fared with teachers like these. What did you learn? I learned a lot by reading this book, but the two things I learned were that W.E.B. Du Bois and Susan B. Anthony were both teachers. I've heard these names many times throughout history, but had no idea that they both started as teachers. I took a class in African American literature when I was in college. I read several essays and letters by Du Bois, but I never realized that he was a teacher. I find it shocking that after reading his writings, that he believed only 1/10 of the African American population would make it into college. He was a large proponent of African Americans making their own way, and this was surprising. Another person involved in the teaching was Susan B. Anthony, and I know she was involved in the women's suffrage and anti-slavery movements, but had no clue that she had started as a school teacher. After reading this book, I have a great appreciation that I, as a woman, am able to do what I love without fighting tooth and nail to do it. I'm grateful to all of the advocates in the past 200 years that have fought so hard so that I can teach and be seen as an equal in the same field as men. I'm amazed that after years of battling that teachers are still fighting today for equal funding, decent pay, and the passionate teachers to fill students with enthusiasm and learning are hard to find. I was shocked that teachers had been fired for communism. I remember learning about the Red Scare and McCarthyism. I know that politics and actors were blackballed when they thought to be associated with the party. I had no idea that the witch hunt went that far. Teachers, because of their influence on children, were asked to sign loyalty and patriotism oaths, and if the teachers were even thought to have communist ties, they were publicly fired. This was done with no evidence, all on speculation. Teachers have been under the scrutiny of the public eye, but I was shocked at the termination of teachers with no concrete reason. Goldstein quotes the newspapers during the time as saying, "The Board of Education should root out all the disloyal or doubtful teachers. They must be put out of the schools. If they continue to profess sedition publicly, they must be locked up." While I found some of the history and anecdotes interesting, the book as a whole was a struggle to read. The problem was not the information presented or the difficulty of the words, but the presentation of the material was dry and flat. I feel like if Goldstein had interviewed some people and used personal stories instead of just gathering old information in chronological order, it may have been a better read. I was reading on my lunch break at school one day. A teacher walked in, looked at the book, and asked, "What do you think about the book?" I answered her that it was okay, but I was having a hard time getting into it. She laughed and said, "Oh, you too?" She told me she'd read the book a few years ago when she first started teaching and only got 2 chapters in before she gave up. She said it never grabbed her attention and held on. I agree. It was like reading a textbook of information laid out on the page with no real hook, and I don't think I'd recommend it. My final thoughts are that I love teaching, and deep down, I know it's what I've always wanted to do, and I believe it's what I was meant to do. I'll be forever grateful to advocates like Beecher and Susan B. Anthony, who made my life simpler through their actions. I don't think this book will change the way I teach, though. One teacher in this book was quoted as saying, "I feel like I've chosen a profession that in the public eye is worse than prostitution." It's heartbreaking that some teachers leave the school system because they feel like they are being too criticized by the community or stifled by the curriculum. I feel like regardless of how teachers may be perceived by society, I want to be the best teacher that I can be,